Cool. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I am with a superstar artist. You know him from from the likes of Green Arrow to his writing ability on Invincible Universe. And so please welcome Phil Hester. How you doing?
Hi, how are you, Joshua?
Not too bad, man. Just excited to talk to you because I've known your work for about 5 years because I'm kind of new to it. I got in full time around 3 years ago, but I knew you from Green Arrow because my dad read. And
man, you're killing me.
So like I knew who you were, and I was like, man, this guy's art is just so unique, and I was like, that's storytelling right there.
Thanks.
So I wanted to start this by asking you, how'd you get into art and comics? Because I don't think I've read that.
Well, I was a comic book reader, like most comic book professionals. I started as a reader, and I still live in the Midwest. And when I was a kid in the Midwest, it was sort of like, if you're not into sports, you're sort of like an outsider. And so I had to sort of build my own little world, and comics were a big part of that. And as I always liked to draw and I always liked to write. So just like expressing myself by writing and drawing seemed like a very natural thing to me. And when I got into high school, even though I went to a very small high school, there were still like 3 or 4 guys in that high school that were also into comics, enough that I could convince them to make comics with me. Nice. And so we went and we formed this pretend company, publishing house, where we had schedules and we had different books and we stacked it, and we'd get in each other's case if we were late, and we had a whole line. We had a comedy book and a superhero book and a horror book. And just all through high school, we were doing these books for ourselves, not knowing that they were really great training for when I would eventually go pro with it. And I kept that up. I kept making my own fanzines all the way through college. And I kept a pretty rigorous schedule of submitting to Marvel and DC every 6 months.
Okay.
All the way through high school and all the way through college. And that's back when Marvel and DC would actually get back to you on a cold submission. They'd actually give you notes and stuff, which was really helpful and really cool. And I learned so much from that. And about my sophomore year in college was when the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles dropped.
Oh, yeah, man.
So overnight, we went from a handful of comics publishers to dozens and dozens overnight, because all these guys had this idea that if they had a credit card that they could get a $5,000 advance on, they could print a black and white comic and make $10,000. And you sort of could for a while. And so overnight, all these new startup companies needed talent, and the bar was not very high. Even though I wasn't that great, I could cross that bar. And so I started working when I was still in college, getting my art degree. And I finished my degree and kept sort of plying my trade. And I've been I couldn't support myself solely from comics, but I've been getting paid to make comics since I was 18 years old. And then,
damn.
And then I went then I quit my day job when I was 24, and it's just been kind of a slow climb, from those black and white indies to the sort of mid-major publishers to Marvel and DC and Image, and doing my own things.
So how did which one did you start with first? Did you start with Marvel or DC?
It's hard to describe this, because my very, very first gig was for Marvel, and it was I attended a really great convention in Kansas City. Kansas City has a really cool con scene. And the organizer of that con, a guy named Mike Worley, who's a really talented cartoonist in his own right, does a lot of stuff for Bongo and other kind of cartoony publishers. And he always made a point to invite editors to conventions, which wasn't that common back then. But it brought like the wannabes like me to the convention big time because we wanted to talk to editors. And a Marvel editor there named Terry Kavanaugh looked at my samples, and they weren't great. but he saw something in there. He saw that like I drew a spaceship background, and instead of doing like that kind of BS, like a bunch of lines, you know, like that people would did, I did kind of like a Wally Wood, like throwback EC kind of background. Okay. And he recognized that, and he's like, "Oh, that's you like Wally Wood. You know what you at least want to do, you know." So he gave me a script on the spot. And, like a bunch of other pros were standing around. They're like, "That doesn't happen," you know. Like usually you don't get a script on the spot. But it was for a Captain America, a Namor annual. It was an Invader story for a Namor annual, and you know, I thought I was the king of the world, and I think I was 23 when it happened, and then and then did a lot of work for like First Comics, and a lot for Caliber and places like that, Dark Horse, and then soon after that, I kind of. Like I think I was 26 or so when I got Swamp Thing at DC, and that was like my first major assignment.
I think that was issue. I think I'm getting this wrong. It was like issue 48, something like that.
No, it's like issue 141 or 140. I want to say
140. Okay.
So it was like Mark Miller's run on that book.
Oh, dude, you got over Mark Miller. That's insane.
Yeah, it was cool.
Now. Just piggyback on that. This was still the same run with after Alan Moore, right?
Yeah, it's that. Not to get too deep into the weeds, but it's the second Swamp Thing series after the Bernie Wrightson one. It's the one that started with the Tom Yates drawing it, and then that kind of went into the Alan Moore one, and then that kind of kept growing up to us, and we took it from 140 to its bitter end. We killed Swamp Thing. It took us like 30 issues, but we killed it.
Now, did you like have a notion to go, man, this is like a character that everyone seems to love?
Oh yeah, especially me, because it was like one of the first comic books I really got into as a kid, and so getting that job was sort of it was sort of like growing up, being the fan of a certain team. And then finding out your first assignment was to play for that team. And so it was like Swamp Thing was like, you know, like definitely a top 5 comic for me. So getting to do that right out of the gate was sort of intimidating. But I was so excited to be there. I didn't really care that I wasn't ready. You know what I mean? Like now I would be like, oh God, I can't handle this. I shouldn't do it. And then I was just so excited. I didn't care that I wasn't good at it.
That's awesome. Now it's funny because you brought up Swamp Thing, and Alan Moore's Swamp Thing is just one of my favorite things ever. And it just so happens I was reading his writing for comics right before you came on. So I have a question. I had Justin Greenwood on Tuesday.
Yes.
And big fan of yours. He's a big fan.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he talked about we talked about how you had a cover for issue 7. Mm-hmm. How'd that come about?
Oh, I think I just ran into him at a con, and like that's the cool thing about comics, and it's sort of the sad thing about COVID is that whole scene's been gone for a year. But the cool thing about it is like there's nothing stopping you from going up and just like if you are like a fan of somebody, just going up and talking to them. You know, I mean. They always tell you not to meet your heroes, but like I've had really good success with it, you know? So like if I like somebody's work or if I'm a fan of them, I'll just go up and at least let them know, because even if you don't become friends for life or whatever, they do appreciate hearing it. And it was that way with Justin. Like I think at a show in California, and we started talking there and just hit it off because we have very similar storytelling sensibilities.
All right. So you wrote an Invincible book called Invincible, and Invincible Universe. Sorry. Yeah. And it's weird because I didn't know this existed until like 4 days ago when I was doing research.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, because I'm newer to comics and
Yeah,
Invincible was like
Oh,
early.
yeah, I keep forgetting.
And I was just like, okay, did you go to Kirkman? Because I know you're a writer, and go, I got an idea for you.
No. Kirkman, I'm not going to name the book I was writing at the time, but I was writing another book for another publisher. And Kirkman called me. He's like, why are you wasting your time? Like working on this S book for this S publisher when you could be working for me. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, well, why don't you come write Guarding the Globe, which is, which is basically the book. I describe it as what else is going on in the Invincible universe. Like there's Invincible in his adventures, and then Guarding the Globe, which is sort of like all the other superheroes in that universe.
So you got to write the Justice League, but just in a different universe.
Yeah. And it was a lot of fun. I had a blast. Todd Knox is such a superb artist, and it was fun to work with him. And then about halfway through our run, I kept calling it in interviews. I kept calling it, this book is what else happens in the Invincible universe. And Robert was like, why don't we just call it that, Invincible Universe? And so we rebooted with a #1 and did another 12 issues. So
that's awesome.
And then sort of tailed, and we were having a really good time, and it was selling well, but it was sort of tailing toward the end of Invincible. And Robert was like, I'm going to kill all these characters. So you need to wrap it up.
Dude, Robert Kirkman's insane. He doesn't care as long as it fits the story needs. He's going to do it.
Oh, yeah. He's fearless. And, his instincts have proven to be right over and over again.
Continue.
So, yeah. And so when he was like, well, I'm going to take one of your main characters, and he's going to become like basically the villain of Invincible. So you have to quit making your book. I was like, well, okay. Just tell me Britt lives, because Britt's my favorite character from that whole thing. Yeah. And it might be my favorite Kirkman character, actually. I love Britt. So,
really?
Yeah. I was like, just tell me Britt lives. So we got that at least.
Did you check out his Oblivion song?
Oh, yeah. I love it. It's gorgeous.
It's too good. Like, It's one of these books that I say this every now and then, but it's one of those books I have to wait to read when I'm like after I'm done writing. Otherwise, I'll read it and just give up. Yeah,
I'm on the proof chain for it. So like,
so they give it to you and see if you see anything.
Yeah. So I see it early, and I see Walking Dead early and stuff like that. So
you lucky bastard.
That's what you get for working at Skybound.
Skybound is consistently putting out great books with Zdarsky now doing Stillwater. Yeah. That book's great too. So Family Tree.
Yes.
With Jeff Lemire, great fucking writer.
Yeah, he's great.
Now I have a theory. Does this question may seem weird? Mm-hmm. Does he like indie rock music?
Oh yeah.
Okay, because there is a song that I listen to called Kids by MGMT. Yes. And there's a lyric in it called Family of Trees.
I know that song, but it may have been Jeff's. It may have been one of Jeff's inspirations. I didn't put those two things together.
Okay.
Like if you want to know what Jeff and I are into, there's a issue 1 of Family Tree. The kid is drawing all over his notebook. Josh, the main character. Well, I guess if you read far enough into the book, you'll find out he's the main character. Mm-hmm. But Josh is drawing on his notebook, and he's drawing all these bands that he's into on the notebook. So they sort of reflect a combination of Jeff's taste and my taste.
That's cool. Now, I haven't seen you do like a sort of a horror story. This seems like a horror story.
Yes.
It's like post-apocalyptic, and people are turning into like these plant-like creatures. Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
And it's just very weird and scary.
Yeah, it starts off as sort of like a little bit smaller. It starts off as kind of a body horror book. Mm-hmm. And then as it progresses, you realize it's more of an apocalyptic book. And then it becomes, there's sort of 3 main movements. It's a body horror thing. It's about a family disintegrating. And then it becomes an apocalyptic thing about a family trying to hold it together. And then it becomes post-apocalyptic. It becomes a survival horror book. And then it's about just the human race trying to persevere. and this one family can sort of guide it or fail it. And that's sort of the three main movements of Family Tree.
So when you were doing like the characters design and everything, did you want to make it seem like based off of what they looked like, that they were either going to separate or that they were just going to, no matter what, stay together?
No, because here's another thing is like Jeff is sort of a very instinctual writer. I know it doesn't look like that from the outside because everything falls together so well.
Meticulous.
But he's very improvisational. So like if he likes the way something feels, he'll take it in a different direction. We've talked about this a lot of times, but the story that people are reading now is not the initial story. Like it's gone in a lot of different directions. And it's always been for the best because his instincts about what makes a good comic are really, really strong.
Yeah.
So I just tried to design this like kind of scruffy looking family that you can tell love each other, but they're sort of like on the edge of not holding it together. And I wanted to give them all a family resemblance, but I also wanted them to be recognizable over time because they go through a lot of changes. The only person who doesn't change too much is Judd because he's already an ancient wreck of a man, which he's my favorite character. I love drawing Judd. I'd draw Judd like till the end of time. I love drawing those guys. Like one of my most recent assignments for DC was Batman Beyond. And
okay.
I kept telling my editor, all I care about is drawing old Bruce Wayne. I just want to draw a craggy old Bruce Wayne. Can we do it?
We're working with Dan Jurgens on that book?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That guy's a great writer. And like, it's weird, man, because we're going to go into DC now because we're already there.
Sure.
You did probably, I'm going to say it, my favorite run of Green Arrow ever is the one you did with Kevin.
Thanks.
And if I was an artist working with him, I'd be so pissed with how many word balloons are on the ball.
That was actually a topic at the beginning. Was he was writing so much dialogue, and it was actually a big part of why I got the job. Was because Bob Schreck, the editor of the book, sort of understood that I knew how to balance panels and compose panels and pages so that they were readable, even when they had a ton of dialogue in them. And he sort of brought me on board to sort of facilitate that. But then, of course, over time, Kevin got it wasn't like he had a bad grip on it. He just wanted to pack in a lot of story. So like he wrote a lot.
I mean, that's what he did with Daredevil.
Yeah. And so like eventually he realized that he like, you're Kevin Smith. They're going to let you do whatever you want. Like take your time and do it your way. And like if you read the second art, if you read Sounds of Violence, it's a lot more sparse and a lot more action heavy. And he sort of like
it seemed like he tamed it down a bit.
Yeah, he sort of lets me take the storytelling reins a little bit more. And it's just from Kevin learning to adapt to the format, I think.
Now, was he doing with you full script or the Marvel style?
Oh, totally full script. Like they couldn't be like this thick, they were huge. So he wrote all the dialogue, but he also was like very, very specific about, what he wanted to see and, the timing of certain storytelling elements. So yeah, he was very hands-on. So
do you like that? Because I know as like an artist, you like to have like fun and freedom a bit to do your thing. So when you get like a script that big, were you upset a little bit?
No. I've been at this, even by then, I'd been at it for a long time. Even back in 2000, I'd been doing it for like 15 years already. So I'd seen it all. So like nothing's going to freak me out. And I actually like the challenge of working in different formats with different people. And it was just a new learning experience for me. And I learned a ton from it. I also learned a ton about writing from working with Kevin. I was very lucky to be on this like multi-year, multi-job streak where I was working with like Bendis and Grant Morrison and Mark Miller and Kevin Smith and
Bendis is my god, dude.
Brad Meltzer and Judd Winnick. And I was learning from all these guys. Like I was learning more about how to write, and it helped inform my work, I think, I hope. And it's still happening today. I'm learning a ton from Jeff. Working
Jeff
on
is like so weird because well, I just want to say this, like his Gideon Falls book, I went in there not knowing what to think, and we're near the end of it and I'm still not knowing what to think.
Yeah.
It's just changing constantly.
Yeah, and that's like what I was talking about before. Jeff, he improvises a lot, and he takes the story where he feels like it needs to go, and so sometimes it goes in unexpected places.
So you also created probably the coolest villain for Green Arrow that I've seen, and his name is the coolest name. Onomatopoeia.
Yeah.
That when I read that, it actually scared me because I'm just like, this guy can be the first off, he's scary. He looks scary as hell. And his whole thing is just emitting sound effects in different various ways.
Yeah,
it's scary, man.
Yeah, because a lot of times they're almost they're tells, like they're almost like precursors to what he's going to do. It's not like he doesn't do the sound effects afterwards. Mm-hmm. Like if he walked up to you in an alley and said "chop," something bad is about to happen to you. You know? So like that was like one of the I think that's what gives him an air of creepiness, you know, and also his look that he's faceless.
Yep.
And that when we're introduced to him, he's actually killing superheroes.
And he has this creeper look where he's like hunched over a little bit, long neck, and like when you look at it, you just go, I don't want to see that guy in any other book ever.
Right. And sort of Kevin felt that way too. He was sort of like, when we created him, we have what's called character equity in him, which means we have some say over like how he's used, and if he is used, we get a little piece of the pie. Nice. And when we created him, Kevin like really put his foot down about like saying, I'm the only guy who writes onomatopoeia.
So that I didn't know if that was a thing where you guys are like can like dictate where the character goes. Is that like
well, I can't, but Kevin can.
Right. Okay. Now is that like mainly, does every writer get that? Like, I created this guy, I could tell you yes or no?
No. Well, nowadays, Marvel and DC are better about giving characters character equity in characters, but they don't let you call the shots unless you've got a ton of juice. Unless you're a Jeff Johns or a Brian Bendis or a Kevin Smith. You're not telling them, you know, you can't use this character unless I'm writing it. They're, you know, writers, freelancers come and go, you know, and those are multi-billion-dollar corporations, and those are multi-billion-dollar characters, and they call the shots.
Now my comic book writer god is Brian Michael Bendis, and yes. I didn't know you did a book with him. What'd you do?
Well, we did 2 issues of right at the beginning of my Green Arrow run. I also did 2 issues of Ultimate Marvel Team Up with him.
Oh, wow.
And we did the Hulk Spider-Man team up. And then also, I've just known him forever. I've known him like from the Caliber days when we were starting out.
Caliber days, dude.
Yeah, we were starting out at the same time, you know. And I've done like a little bit.
Walk the earth, dude.
Yeah, I've done like a little Daredevil story with him too. And
oh, really?
You know, yeah, we're always looking for something to do, and we get to do little things here and there.
Now, I know the way Bendis scripts, and I feel sorry when you read his books too. It's like they're messy unless only him and the artist know what's going on.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think we speak the same language. So when I got his scripts, it wasn't like it didn't throw me off or anything, because he's a very cinematic kind of writer. And if you're a comic book artist that cares about storytelling, his scripts make a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so when you get a script, we're going to like a writing side of it. Sure. When you get a script, what's the first thing you read as an artist? Do you go, all right, description and then dialogue, or do you go, or do you think about it like in the way of storytelling, like, oh, how am I going to do this?
Right. I read it all at once. I print it out for one thing. I know a lot of artists do this, and I have to do it. I print it out on paper, mm-hmm. and then I'll sit down with like a marker and I'll read through it and I'll immediately make visual notes on the actual script. So like if an image pops into my mind while I'm reading it, I make sure to jot it down. So when I come back to it later and I try to make more cohesive thoughts about the storytelling, those initial inspirations that I get from reading the script are right there. And then I go back and do a more considered reading of the script. And that's when I start thinking about how is this going to look on the page? You know, how am I going to break this down? And that's when I take those initial inspirations and start thinking about page composition, panel composition, how the balloons are going to be placed on the page. I try to do balloon placements, even though it's not my job. It's the letterer's job. I still think that's such an essential part of page flow that I have to think about that. And then
if you put like something important where the letters are going to be, like,
and your characters have to be in speaking order or something that can be construed as speaking order. And from there, I just make these very, very small thumbnails and work it up into a full-size page after that.
Damn, man, I can never be an artist, man, because that's just extensive. Also, I don't have the artist gene. That's my grandpa. So
yeah, it's a lot of work. But the cool thing about being a writer and an artist is sort of like they're very similar tasks. They're like just sort of different stops on the same train track. You know, it's all about storytelling, and storytelling is the engine. And like sometimes you're presenting it visually, sometimes you're presenting, you know, with text. And so for me, switching back and forth seems very natural and not at all like separate disciplines.
Now, since you're also a writer, are you going to do anything that's also creator owned that you write and draw at the same time, kind of like Mike Mignola?
Yeah, I'm always working on something. I'm always trying to find something like that. And last year I did a story for my creator-owned character called The Wretch that I write and draw. And that's available on Comixology now if people want to check it out. It's a character that I've been working on for like 25 years. And
wow.
I did a bunch of issues of it in the 90s, and sort of like since then just did a few like short stories here and there. And then finally we collected it all and put it on Comixology for people to check out. But it's sort of like just pure storytelling experiments. But as far as like writing drawing the things that I write, I try to treat myself. I try to cast myself the way I would any other artist. So like when I write a project, I try to be very like objective about it and think, am I the right artist for this project? Just because I wrote it doesn't mean I should be drawing it. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of times I'll write something and I know it's not right for me, and I'll go look for another artist to draw it. And then other times but also I have to admit, one of the most fun things about comics is collaborating with people.
Oh yeah.
So like, even if I am right for drawing something, sometimes I still go out and look for an artist because I just want to like do something with my friends, you know? And that's sort of like the magic of comics is collaborating like that.
That's exactly what Justin said too. He was like, he said he was like very lucky with all the creators he had the past few projects because they're just best friends.
Yeah. And you make like lifelong friends that way, you know?
Yeah.
It's a very intense relationship. Like me and a comic together is a very intense relationship, you know? And it's sort of like, even if you're totally on the same page about what the project is, occasionally you're going to clash about the way it should be executed. And, but also, like I was speaking about with Jeff, learning from Jeff earlier, you're going to learn from these collaborations too. And I've been at this so long that like when an artist I'm working with gives me back something I didn't anticipate, I'm almost never disappointed. I'm almost always pleasantly surprised. And it's neat to see an artist I respect visualize something in a different way than I would. And that helps inform me as I go on to other projects in the future.
Now, do you feel like you could do that more? Like there's more of a collaborative spirit doing independent books rather than the big two?
Yeah. Because when you do a book for, let's say, Image, you're calling your own shots. There's no editor unless you hire an editor. There's no editor.
Right.
So it's sort of like up to you to make the creative decisions, and the responsibilities on you too. But the freedom is there. So, here's a good example. Andy Parks has been my inker forever. He inked my Green Arrow stuff. He inked Ant-Man when we did that at Marvel. Like, he's inked a ton of my stuff. But when we were starting out at Marvel and DC, editors wouldn't put us together. Like, we were doing indie stuff together and we were dying to work together. But like, they would put him on different pencilers and they would put different inkers on me, just because editors had a different idea of what they wanted our work to look like. And it took us like sort of proving ourselves before we were seen as a team. And it's that way with every like relationship in sort of corporate comics. The publishers and editors have a say in what they want their books to look like. So you sort of, if you sign up for that assignment, you've got to be ready to like, either walk away or do what they say. And so sometimes it takes a while for you to like collaborate with the people you really want to collaborate with.
I feel like that's kind of sad though, because when the creators are having a hell of a fun time, I feel like the readers know it too, and they have a fun time as well.
Yeah, but I'll say this too. In those times when I can't call my shots and I have to work with people I didn't necessarily choose to work with, those have been like great learning experiences too. And those people become friends. So it's not like if I always called my own shots and worked with the same people over and over and over again, I would never like grow as a creator and experience new approaches. So sort of getting forced into a box by the contingencies of corporate comics, that can help you grow also.
And that's good too, because I used to play football. I mean, obviously, look at me, I'm huge. So
you barely fit in the camera.
My coach used to say, if you ain't growing, you're dying.
Yeah, that's true.
So
it's especially true for artists. I know tons of artists that like peak in their 20s, which has always terrified me. Like, because they're so good at what they do, they sort of say, this is it. This is what I'm going to do forever. And then they just sort of like become parodies or echoes of themselves as they get older. And I never felt that. I always wanted to be like, the people I really respected were the people that kept growing, like Alex Toth or Jack Kirby.
Dave Gibbons.
Yeah, like they kept pushing what they were good at. And sometimes that took them into unfamiliar territory. It took Frank Miller into like a less fan-friendly territory. But to him, it was more exciting. And he, like, I'm sure everybody wanted him to draw like the way he drew on Daredevil for the rest of his life. And that would have been a smash hit. It would have been like Radiohead recording the Bends and never changing after that. That'd been great. That'd have been a great band, if they put out like 10 more Bends, but they kept pushing. And I not to that degree, because I'm not Frank Miller, I'm not a genius, but like I like the fact
I beg to differ.
I like the fact that I feel like I'm still getting better, even though I'm in my 50s. And I feel like I can credibly get better, the entirety of my career, because even the physical skills that will fall off eventually, like in my 60s, they'll be replaced by all the like tricks of the trade that I've learned over this time. And I can still be pushing on the storytelling frontiers as I get older, even if I can't draw as well.
There's always an upside to everything, dude. And you just hit the ball. So I have a weird question, because I haven't really talked to many artists. So how does one pitch to an artist anyways? A writer goes, I have an idea. What normally happens after that?
Yeah. What you're looking for, like if you're a young creator, I'm going to tell it in that context. If you're a young creator, you're looking for a partner. You're not looking for a hired hand. So if you've got a very specific story and you've got an idea of how you want it to look, you're going to look for artists that are on that wavelength and people that understand your storytelling. You're also going to look for people that are sort of at the same level of professionalism as you are, because, like when I was speaking earlier about knowing Bendis since Caliber days, we all knew each other when we were 20 and broke, and we were like 6 people in a hotel room at conventions. Okay. Those are still the people I work with today, but we can afford our own hotel rooms.
Right.
So, like, try to find somebody that's going to be a partner with you, because you're going to move up together. And also, if you look at them as a partner, you don't look at them as a hired hand. You're sharing the project with them. They're more invested in the project. They're going to give you more out of it. So you approach those people the way you'd be approaching like a date, okay? Mm-hmm. And you're going to approach them with this project, and like they're going to say yes or no, or they're going to say, no, I like it. I like you, but I don't like this project. Let's do something else. Or let's, try to meet up again in the future, whatever, all these things. Yeah. But it's important to like make a real connection with those people, because those people, like I said, are going to grow with you. And if they click with your story idea, then you're in the right place. You're not looking for somebody like you want to share the money that you generate like equally, whatever money there is, but that's not really should be at the forefront when you're looking for somebody to work with. You're looking for somebody that you can trust and be your partner, and sort of share a character or a creation together.
I appreciate that. Now I know what I'm doing.
I hope.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm doing.
I mean, to a point. I have a rough idea now.
Yeah.
So what's next for you, man? Because you got a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah. I'm writing a thing for Oni that's not announced yet. That'll be out later. I think next year, kind of a horror science fiction thing.
Oh, nice.
I'm working on a project with John McCrae that'll be out late next year too. Kind of a wrap up to a project that we started that didn't get finished, and that'll come to the light of day next year. I'm drawing a short stint on a big DC book here coming up, and I'm finishing Family Tree.
Man, Family Tree is gonna be sad to go. I'm gonna miss it.
Yeah, I am too, but it's sort of like I've read the ending, and it's very satisfying, and it feels like those 12 issues is a full cycle, and the last issue is big too. So kind of like not Gideon Falls big, like the last issue of Gideon Falls is like a graphic novel. We're not going to be quite that big, but it'll be oversized.
Okay. So I appreciate you taking your time to just talk, because I learned so much. Appreciate it.
It's my pleasure, Joshua.
All right. Thank you guys for watching the video, and the one person who showed up.
We'll get more later.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I'm hoping for. Join me next weekend, where I'll be talking with Jim Zub. And I think, because this is like our communication skills is a little weird, but I think also Shane Davis on the same day. Shane Davis, everyone knows Shane Davis, great artist. So come check me out next week. Like, subscribe. If not, oh well, I'm just doing this to learn. So hope